Okay. Supriya, can you hear my voice and see the screen? Hi, Bhumika. Can you hear my voice and see the screen? In case you can't use your mic, you can use the chat.
Yes, yes, it's visible.
Okay,
Uh,
perfect.
Good evening,
Perfect.
sir. Yes,
Good
sir.
evening.
I
Good
can
evening.
hear you.
Okay. So, Bhumika, you're coming for the first time. At least I'm meeting you for the first time. Supriya, Bhumika, both. You can stop me at any moment of time to if you wish to share something or to ask a question. So the class works in this particular way that you can stop me at any moment of time.
Sure.
You don't need to wait. You can, raise your hand or straight away interject so that, we are able to talk in the class and, make this a little better. What we'll also do is MDI 3, MDI 1, according to the timetable, there's a class today, one tomorrow, and one next Saturday. So
Okay.
what we will do is instead of next Saturday, we'll schedule the class tomorrow, 12 to 2
Mm-hmm.
and 5 to 7. So between today and tomorrow, we'll finish those three classes rather than drag it for one more Saturday.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are doing MDIE one is gender and diaspora, and let's look at a little bit of the history about what is feminization or migration. These are some terms which you can note down or remember, and you could use it while you are crafting your answer in your end term or in your assignments. Feminization of migration is one such term. So, in MDI 1, where we were doing theory and methodology, one thing that we have understood is the fact that the story of human being is the story of migration. Essentially, human being has always been on the move and migrating. In fact, the modern human being evolved in Africa. Earlier theories talked about East Africa. Subsequent theories talked about, sites of evolution were multiple sites in Africa. And if you look at it, essentially all of us in any part of the world are actually immigrants and an African diaspora because all of us came out of Africa and we have evolved over a period of time through various permutations and combinations. And then it becomes a little ironical when nation states today, come out with identity politics and talk about anti-immigration because essentially the whole world is an immigrant. Now, once migration was the basic storyline, remember there are two, if you look at biological ways, there are two sexes, the male and the female. And remember when, they are migrating, they would be both male and female. But more often than not, historically, the study of migration has been the study of male. We'll also look at the fact how sex and gender are different. Sex biologically are two, male and female. Gender wise, it becomes a little different. So we'll look at this and then we'll look at a little bit case studies. There are some case studies in Unit 69. I've clubbed all the three units to get you an overview about all the three units at the same time. Because we have only three classes, you are able to cover a lot. So let's quickly get into it. Quick gender and sex. Sex is biological, gender is behavioral, cultural, psychological traits associated with biological traits. So, a person today might be a woman, but might exhibit cultural traits of a male. There is some stereotyping which happens in terms of male child or a female child. You see advertisement and a particular advertisement in terms of stereotype says ladke rote nahi hain, boys do not cry. Now that's a cultural stereotyping. So the sense of sex is a label, male or female. One is assigned at birth based on factors as chromosomes, genital, and hormones. We also know that there are, trans-sex individuals where there are, the genitals are compromised or they are different. So there are all kinds of things in the course of evolution. People who feel their sex don't align with their gender may identify as transgender or non-binary. Relational and refers not simply to men and women but relationship between them, and notions of gender deeply rooted, like for example when we say women don't do such things or men don't do such things. For example, the job of a woman is in the kitchen and a job of a man is in an office. Now where did this come from? How did this evolve? So if you go into the history of how these gendered notions have evolved, you will get to know a little better as to, and remember, characteristic wise, in terms of even physical strength, men and women are not too many different. So if you go and Google and search on women bodybuilders or women weightlifters or women wrestlers, you will see them, they are comparatively physically endowed like men. They are changeable over time and space, indicating that variations in gender conception can be found both within and between cultures. So that's how gender, is culturally constructed. It has been, and it is specific based on specific cultures. How, over the course of modernization and civilization, how these things happened. Gender analysis was not emphasized while studying migration patterns for long. So, more often than not, migration was on biological sex of male. Also, need to understand more often than not, it was the males who migrated as traders, as sailors, as laborers, and women were more often as wives, as mothers, as daughters. It was only over a period of time as women became empowered, they became politically aware, politically enabled, economically enabled, did such, and then obviously the experiences of a male are totally different from the experiences of a female, because female biologically needs a different set of environment, male needs a different set of an environment. Implications of migration were similar for both migrant men and women, it was assumed, whereas it is not. The way women process things are way different. Men and women are not the same. Men and women are different in the sense they process things differently. They are constructed differently, and that is why they need to be studied differently. Gender major influential factor all stages of international migration. uh, in aspiration, motivation of persons to move abroad, their migration pathways, choice of destination, settlement experience in new host countries. Everything is different for a female. Gender specific studies of migration have discussed the feminization of migrant, female migration moving abroad independent. See, for the first time, women are moving independently. Today, they are moving independently as students, they are moving independently as professionals, and so on and so forth. For work, for education, for various things in greater numbers than ever before. Calls for a better understanding of migration experiences of women, men, and other gender groups. Now, think about it. In terms of an LGBTQ plus, these particular category of people would have a different experience. They would have a different set of challenges. They would have a different set of problems. For example, look at the way how LGBTQ plus are stereotyped in our movies, stereotyped in our daily lives, in our media. There's a growing literature on evidence of double disadvantage for female migrants. Account of sex and migration status, more likely to face discrimination or mistreatment in comparison to male migrants. And think about the fact LGBTQ plus. when most people are not even sensitized to this category of people, and their needs, the way they interpret things, the way they face discrimination during irregular migration and asylum seeking. There is a pressing need for better protection now. And remember, migrations could be multiple types. Specifically irregular and asylum seeking, the migrants need to be protected better. And inequalities against gender-based violence and exploitation during migration transitions and settlements need to be studied and worked out, because we've also seen that in terms of migration, not only there are the home countries, there are the host countries, and there are these transit countries through which these migrants go. And inevitably, when countries now start having this anti-immigrant sentiment in terms of politics, borders are being raised, protectionists are being brought in, inevitably the migrant will use an irregular means. And an irregular means is always fraught with various kinds of dangers. So historically, gender dimension, men historically dominating, women have always been involved, accompanying families or migrating independently for marriage, work, or as refugees. And each context is different, and each context needs a different tactic for it. So, quickly, historical trends: early migration, men more likely to migrate, shifting patterns over time, rise in women migrating independently for work, gender diversity of migration patterns, gender gap between male and females is narrowing. Male migrants still outnumber females at global level, though in region wise, there are certain regions where women outnumber male in terms of migration. There are regional variations, and then the feminization of migration, increasing number of women migrating independently, including heads of households, growing proportion of women in the migration flow. So these are the historical trends. Tell me if I am going fast. If I'm going okay, then it's perfectly fine. Social norms and cultural expectations, women leaving their house. Then there are these societal attitudes. Women leaving their house, level of autonomy, significant role in women migration, economic opportunity. Is there work available for women, both origin and destination country? Family dynamics, family structures, migration patterns, forced displacement are disproportionately affected by forced migration, conflict, persecution, natural disaster. Women are more vulnerable. So these are factors influencing. Remember, in case you need this presentation, you can send me, let me give you my email ID. You can send me a mail on my mail ID. I can send you the PPT, or you can pick up my mobile from your WhatsApp group and send me a message. I can send you the PPT, and obviously, all these presentations come on the YouTube channel, Migration and Diaspora, where you can download it. Then there is a shifting age and skill structure, there's a feminization of agriculture. Inevitably, if the males migrate, then it's the women who are, handling the house and handling the profession. Out migration of men can lead to feminization of agriculture. Population redistribution. And remember, migration is not only international, it is internal also. So, in a lot, for example, places like Uttarakhand, places like Himachal, you will find villages and towns where men have migrated. It's basically women, children, and old people, which leads to redistribution of population. Then there are intersectionality. Other factors like class, ethnicity, and age also play a crucial role. For example, young people migrate more than the older people. Class and caste. So upper caste becomes easy, though lower caste women have much more autonomy than upper caste women. So there are all kinds of intersectionality which are at play. Empowerment versus vulnerability. Migration can empower women through increased autonomy. It can also expose them to increased vulnerability. Remember, there are intended consequences and there are a lot of unintended consequences. In fact, we will see, for example, countries like Philippines, where a lot of women outnumber men in terms of migration, and women migrate for, domestic or hospitality or caregiving role. You have men based families, how children are raised on those families, how the men take it. There is a whole complex structure in place. Need for gender responsive policy. Inevitably, whenever a country is making a policy, it needs to be gender responsive. Organizations need to understand gender responsive policies, specific needs and challenges faced by women and men in migration. Sex-specific migration trends and patterns. 19th and 20th century international largely composed of economic migrants and colonial settlers. Settler colonizers have relatively balanced sex composition because inevitably, let's say the British colonized India. When the officer is coming, his wife accompanies to give him company out here in terms of people he could talk to, because the colonized people had a different culture. It was an alien country and so on. So however, between 1840 and 1920, more male dominated. Indentured labor moved, then other labor moved at at various places, were more male dominated. Empires grew, increasing level of international trade, temporary male workers to build infrastructure, work on plantation in heavy industry. So for example, recently when Qatar had its football World Cup, and they needed a large workforce to build the stadiums, it was male migration, which leads to other unintended consequences, but largely it was a male migration. 20s increased regulation of immigration pushed global migration towards a balanced sex distribution of migrant population. National laws increasing restricted male dominated labor, and women became larger share. So, and remember, migration is also based on context. It is based on the time frames. It is based on various factors. It's not a single factor. People just do not get up and say we need to migrate. There have to be conditions, and more often than not, every time migration is for a real or perceived betterment of life. The migrant feels that by migration, he or she or they will better their life. Remember, it's a very there's a high social cost in migration, because not only social, high economic cost, because you have to in internal you have to buy tickets, you have to look at where to stay, you have to in an internal migration in the same country, at least culturally it's the same, but in international, culturally it's different. You have to learn a new language, there is visa fee, there is passport fee, there is transport fee, so on and so forth. Guys, I hope I'm not going too fast. भूमिका, सुप्रिया.
It's okay, sir. It's okay.
ओके, ठीक है. मुझे बता देना अगर मैं बहुत फास्ट जा रहा हूँ.
Sure, sure, sure.
Okay. 60s, where the first estimates of global migrant population by sex are available, women comprise 46.6. So 60s were the first time they started, having, estimations by sex. Feminization of international migration during economic globalization over the last few decades. We had looked at globalization and transnationalism, basically interconnections. Remember, globalization was right from the the evolution of civilization. Various civilizations were, they were traders. The only thing was at that time, because there was no faster transportation and no faster communication, it took a long time for a trader to possibly go on the mule route or through a ship. Today, with the faster means of communication and transportation and cheaper means of communication and transportation, you're 24 by 7 into 365 days connected, which is what is globalization. And that has led to transnationalism where people keep moving back and forth. So today, an Indian American feels himself or herself more connected with India's affair as much as an Indian would do. Number of female migration that has tripled, 46 million to 135 million in 2020. Larger rise in the number of male migrant, expansion in the number of countries, general increase in the level of global. The population is also increased. So when the population is increased, people are traveling all the more. Growth of female migrant in recent seen in North America, parts of Europe is due to a number of factors. Migrant population is older than elsewhere due to migration policies, allow permanent settlement and family. And again, it depends on countries' migration policies, how they are allowing or stopping migrants to come in. Role of longer female life expectancies extend to increase the relative styles of older female migrant groups. Also, economically independent, they have the money to spend. Because of this aging population in the West, they need caregiving, which leads to migration from the global South for the caregiving industry. A whole lot of, as I said, intended and unintended consequences of various activities by human beings and states. Increasing aging population, change in labor force participation led to demand for workers in healthcare, leads to migration. Increase in demand for female workers in wealthier countries across Asia, concentrated job regarded as low skill, such as domestic work, entertainment and hostess, restaurant and hotel staff, assembly line. There are certain industries which are, stereotypically or looked at as women centric, being air hostesses, for example, or hostesses or caregiving. Nurses was a very specific women centric industry. Now there are a lot of male nurses, but women still predominance of women in this industry. Immigrant population in Middle East, North Africa have been predominantly male, have been rising steeply due to demand in Gulf cooperation, outpaced demand for female migrants in the same country, such as domestic workers. So that is where the gender roles come in. That women can do only these type of jobs. Males can only do these types of jobs. For example, in Saudi Arabia, women cannot drive, so you need drivers, which have to be males. They make 48.6% of all female workforce in Arab states. And again, remember, all these migration patterns, migration force, or migration population needs to be studied country by country, region by region, because everything is different. Excess number of male migrants are the results of moves within the continent. Men have traditionally migrated alone to pursue employment opportunities. Again, if you see, if you go on a labor chalk in your place where you stay, you will see predominantly men, but over a period of time, you will see more and more women also accompanying men on the labor chalk. Increasing willingness of for females in Africa to migrate for work and this is over a period of time because of women empowerment, because of political rights, because of economic rights, because of transportation. For example, the state of Delhi introduced a novel scheme whereby women could travel in DTC buses free of cost. Now, this particular policy of the Delhi government enhanced female mobility because now they could use public transport, which was a safer means of transportation to go about doing their jobs or even going about shopping, buying, because it saved them the transportation money. So every little policy of empowerment, changes migration patterns or mobility patterns. Substantial impacts on family dynamics and communities in places of origin. Female migrants from Southeast Asia working as domestic workers in extended periods, children left behind are cared for by grandparents acting as surrogate parents. So it has all kinds of implications. So, for example, women working leads to augmentation of family income, but then there needs to be a way for caregiving of children. Uh, 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 Unless it's an extended family, it becomes difficult. But even if it's an extended family in the absence of a mother or in the absence of a father, uh, it impacts children, it impacts their education, and so on and so forth. Countries such as Philippines and Indonesia make the most female dominant migration corridors. Long history of nurses from Philippines moving to USA, female migrant population, one of the largest in the world. Keralite nurses, initially in the North India, you will find all Keralite nurses. Now, a lot of them are migrating abroad, Western countries, Gulf, and so on and so forth. Female Canadian migrant population in US built over a long history, consistent outnumbered Canadian male migrant population. So, as I said, individual regions, individual countries, varying patterns based on a lot of factors. Remember, there are no specific deterministic patterns. Gender and migration, complex interrelationship. Person's sex and gender shape almost all stages and categories of migration, including voluntary and forced. Dimensions associated with the complex interplay of gender and migration, essential to formulate essential. So when you're crafting your answer, you need to write the fact that gender has a complex relationship and shapes all stages and categories of migration, including voluntary and forced. Effective policy help alleviate structural inequalities continuing for centuries. For example, this particular policy of DTC bus and free women mobility helped alleviate structural inequality because women, there was a security component in terms of mobility in non-public transport, facilities. Public transport offers them a security. And then the Delhi government also brought in another policy whereby they deployed home guards as caretakers of the bus of the public transport. Now this is helps alleviate structural inequality. So now the women can travel based on whatever time their workplace necessitates without having to fear for their life and limb. Now, these kinds of policies help, reduce structural inequalities. International Organization for Migration role expectation relationship associated with being a man or woman, boy or girl, affects all aspects of migration and can also be affected in new ways by migration. So, as I said, migration not only empowers a female, but also puts her in a vulnerable position. So, both things happen. So, one needs to understand how it works. Now, with gender, there are certain inequalities which are built in based on culture, challenges faced by migrant workers in global south. We have seen world over, for example, women are paid less than men, including in the global north. In the Western Hemisphere, also, many a times there are cases where women are paid less than men for the same job. due to different socio-economic and political administrative conditions, broad issues relating to gender equality, cutting across countries, and UN report on gender provides the following pointers. So, what are the pointers? Inequality in political power. You can see the number of women, for example, irrespective of the fact that right from India's independence, there was universal franchise in terms of voting patterns, yet women are still not even composed of 33% of the MLAs or MPs currently, in spite of the fact that women almost are 50% of the country's population. Their access to decision making and representation in political process is hindered. You'll see in a lot of places it's actually the women who stand as candidates, whereas the men do the work, uh, which is basically an unequal political power, inequalities within households, decision making, access to resources, habit witness, different in legal status, entitlement, inheritance, employment opportunities, pay structures, division of labor within economy, low paid jobs, non-standard work, irregular work, unorganized sector. Women are more because the contractors can browbeat women. Productive assets such as education, skill, property, and credit. Still in rural India, the women are not given nutrition and food commensurate similar to the men and the boys. Inequality in domestic unpaid sector, limit prospects for women to get an education and employment outside their home. And more often than not, even in the urban areas, you will find a lot of educated, empowered women discouraged from working outside the home. You can see it around your places. Then, of course, okay, yes, Bhumika,
Sir, I have one questions.
please.
Uh, can you
Uh,
please explain me, like, if the people is very well educated in India, but they are trying to move to with a labor class job in this normal in Europe, especially in Europe country, is this normal, sir?
See, again, you need to understand why would a person want to migrate, the reasons behind migration.
Mhm.
Now, unless we know what is the context of that migration, it is very difficult to make a deduction. For example, there is a possibility of a political instability from a place where a person is migrating. That could be one. The second could be that that low stature job, which is not commensurate with the education of the person, could be a first step into entering that country to become a citizen or to get a permanent residency to be able to move forward. See, again, there was this particular news item about this boy from Haryana who was detained at the New York airport and deported back, and he had entered US through the smuggling route, through the illegal route, having paid lakhs of rupees to enter the US illegally. Now, what would be the conditions? I do not know. I cannot second guess. Now, more often than not, people go in commensurate jobs. So, for example, if I have a particular degree and not getting a particular job, in that case, that distress could lead to a rural boy or a girl, and typically boys selling a piece of land, hoping to enter into a Western country or a developed country to make it well. I remember I said real and perceived betterment of life. Bhumika?
Yes, understand, sir. Listening.
You will also hear news items about in India, in the internal migration, the position of clerks and MAs and PhDs applying for that position.
Hmm. Yes,
You
sir.
would you Google it and you will come across enough of these news items where MAs, graduates, MAs, and PhDs are applying for clerk or PN or this position. Now, inevitably, what would be the context under which these people are applying? there could be multiple reasons, and more often than not, distress is the one where for example, today, because of a jobless growth in India, the shrinking of private sector, and the attraction of pensions in the government sector, there's a push towards trying to get a government job. So, and that makes a person desperate in spite of an education qualification. So, in technical terms, it's called an underemployment. Because if you're a PhD and you're doing a PN's job, that's gross underemployment. But then people do it. The same people who do it in internal migration would do it in international migration. Bhumika?
Understand.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
well, it's depend on the situation.
It depends on the situation. What is the situation? What, because unless you are able to research on the situation, and again, sometimes it is a perceived notion of a betterment. For example, a lot of people who migrate from the rural areas to the urban areas perceive to be a better situation, though they come here and stay in slums, and they are actually in a worse situation than what they were in the village. But because of a lack of employment opportunity in the village, that perceived betterment of life gets them into a city where their life becomes much more worse than what they were in the village.
True.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Discriminatory attitudes, gender stereotyping, which often attempts to restrict the independence and aptitude of women in all particular way. Women cannot do this. Women should cover their heads. Women cannot go out in the night. All these stereotypical power statements, rather, women should not go into public spaces or parks in the night. Now, rather than making structural inequalities reduce, these discriminatory attitudes are brought in. Women should not wear this, women should not do this, women should not do this. These are discriminatory attitudes based on traditional power structures in the society, and traditional power structures do not want their power to be disturbed. As internationally, the global north and their power structures do not want the global south people to have a better life. Otherwise, all these West European countries who colonized the global south for so many years, why would they have a problem with global south people coming into their country? It's a traditional power structure. Causes and impacts of migration: income generation, family unification, gender discrimination norms, trafficking, conflict, and persecution. Impacts on migrant themselves, migration and gender relation. So there was this story about this nurse girls from rural Kerala who went to Germany as nurses. They stayed in Germany. A lot of them stayed in Germany. Some came back. Then they got married. And when the Keralite males went to join them in Germany, there was major problem because the Keralite men had a particular expectation out of the Keralite women nurse, but now she was economically independent. The dynamics had shifted. A lot of them could not reconcile. There was abuse. There was killings. There was divorces. All kinds of things happened. Contradictory effects of migration, gender's effect of changing to a more settled life. So all kinds of intended and unintended consequences are there. Social capital and refugee integration, UK find women refugees fared less well in terms of emotional and physical health than their male counterpart. Remember, you are moving from, it's like you have been uprooted, a plant has been uprooted from a particular place, and you try to take a plant from a particular place and try to replant it in another place. You will see a lot of plants die. Social capital in this study meant education, health, employment, houses, social connect. Remember, when a person moves, there is a whole cultural construct which moves. You can just take a person and put it in another place. language, cultural knowledge, right and citizenship, safety and stability. So lots of impacts of migration. So ILO has a gender equality provision, decent work agenda, in conditions of freedom, equity, security. In fact, the whole concept of human rights came about the fact there was after the world wars there was this killings and there were migrations, and human beings said that human beings should have a right because it's a story of human beings. And now, if you see the world and a lot of these countries, you wonder that these were the countries who talked about human rights and they seem to have forgotten everything they talked about. Fundamental conventions mentioned in the ILO Gender Equality and Decent Work Report are as follows. So, what are these? Equal remuneration for men and women, discrimination, respect of employment, freedom of association, protection of rights to organize, minimum age for admission, prohibition and immediate action for elimination of worst form of child labor. As you study migration and diaspora, many a times you wonder that almost the world and humanity seems to be going round and coming to the same point from which we had evolved or we had civilized. So the worst form of human beings are coming back. So these are various gender equality provisions. Gender data is essential to understand complexities, essential to formulate evidence. And in the absence of any data, how would you know? How does a city plan if you do not know how many migrants are coming into the city? How would a country plan if they do not know how many migrants are coming in? And that is why when countries raise borders, bring in immigration policies, all migration then goes underground and becomes illegal. When it becomes underground and illegal, now you don't even know what is happening. And that is why the legal route or the regular route is always better than the illegal or the illegal for the countries itself, for the governments. The most comprehensive data on global migrant stock is published by UNDESA. Regular updates of total migration population, sex-specific bilateral migrant stock. ILO produces estimates of global. Remember, these are estimates based on possibly, for example, how many people are coming in at a particular airport in terms of as an immigrant, how many people are living out as an immigrant, or how many are coming in on a ship or a train, and these are estimates. Challenges production and collection of inclusive sex and gender disaggregate data. So, for example, a male or a female might be biological male or a female, but in respect to gender might identify as possibly in LGBTQ plus. Now, are you segregating those data because each particular gender category has its specific needs? Gaps in data in the intersectional experience of women and people with diverse gender identities, inconsistencies in types and frequencies of measurements. Is there a common measurement? How the countries do it? Lack of capacity in National Statistical Office and data systems. Challenges related to transparency, accountability, and ethics in migration data. Many a times the illegal migration it happens because of the complicity of officials, uh, and so on and so forth. So these are challenges in terms of data collection. Major development, as we talked about, rising number of women, growth of women-centric occupation, independent capacity, and now women-related legislations are happening worldwide, growth of gendered perspective on various issues. Everybody is now waking up. Scholars, academics are waking up to the fact that gender is a specific category that needs to be studied separately. So, feminization of migration, change of global economy, impact of neoliberal policy. Neoliberal policy is again a keyword you will hear multiple times. introduced a series of migration changes, large scale privatization, change in social structures, gap between rich and poor, increase in informal. And this increase in informal economy basically then gets filled with women workforce because women workforce are easy to discipline and control, and less pay can easily be put on them. Males are difficult to control, women are easy to control. Women for developing countries migrate as workers to support their family. And inevitably, everybody migrates for betterment of their life or their family's life. More often than not, women is family, male is also family, but male also looks at individual. Trends in female migration, as we said, UN DESA is the institution. Proportion of female migrant range from 52% in global north to 43% in global south. Not equal, varies with geographical locations. Sectors are more prominent like care work, hospitality. Women for developing countries migrate for care work or as domestic workers. So trends in female migration. Women generally get recruited in the professions that demand traditional gender roles. Most jobs in service sectors are unregulated. And for example, domestic work is invisible. Nobody knows what's happened in a house, and that's why they are exploited. They are vulnerable. They can be paid. There was this news item of these billionaires Hinduja who were underpaying their domestic workers, and they were arrested in Switzerland. Labor takes place within private house sector, largely unregulated, invisible, and more exploitative. So this is a dominant migrant corridors: Philippines, Hong Kong, China, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Iraq, Turkey, Ukraine, Italy. These are various migrant female migrant corridors. This is a data from UN DESA. It's a 2020 data. You can Google and find this data. You don't need to remember this data, but Philippines, Indonesia, Hong Kong are two large migrant corridors. Occupation category, we have talked about domestic work, 67 million domestic workers in the world, 80% are women, low skilled, less educated, remittance they send back contribute to development. Inevitably, migration is also linked to remittances. In some countries, these remittances are in double digits of the GDPs of those countries. Face vulnerability because it's invisible, low wage, no wage, long hours of work, sexual exploitation, trafficking, covered by general labor laws, also hamper their opportunities. So you see recently, if you read the news items in Gurgaon, the police suddenly started hounding the Bengali migrant workers, claiming they are from Bangladesh. All these workers went back. Suddenly, the Gurgaon high-rise societies were without, domestics because all these people were migrants. During COVID, we saw when there was a lockdown imposed without looking at the fact that how will these migrant workers eat, earn, and then we saw a whole lot of migrant workers walking back, and suddenly the urban consciousness understood that large part of the cities are migrant workers. Gulf countries follow something called the kafala system. Individual or company holds sponsorship, and it's a very exploitative system. In fact, again, some news item last year about these women who went to the from Punjab, went to the Gulf for domestic work, actually were trafficked into they were sexually exploited. Absence of any advocate protection mechanism, these migrant workers become extremely vulnerable. They take their passports, they take their travel documents, and then you are in an alien country without any document, without any money. Violation of human rights, labor rights. Again, in service sector, predominantly in caregiving, healthcare sector, opportunity, skills, uh, face many problems like getting trapped in the hands of fake recruiting agents, extra fee to get opportunities. So, this perceived notion of betterment can get people to do, and even normal people, educated people can also fall prey to this, this criminals, this recruiters. They generally get hired to private agencies or informally to work in houses. Introduced in 2018 by German government, identifies 5 areas. So when governments are able to regulate certain work or regulate recruiting agents, then things become more streamlined. It's not that they will go away totally, but they'll become a little more streamlined. Health promotion, additional training nurses, shortage as a critical policy. So some countries bring out critical issues. Like, for example, Canada recently came out with they need people in certain specific areas, whereby immigration is, welcome or fast tracked. Issues and challenges. Women definitely, gender stereotype, women's autonomy, gender based approach, not specific experience, are usually captured in migration laws and policies. And that is where academics and scholarly pursuits come in, because think tanks come in, because these are the guys who are supposed to do research, supposed to study what is happening, and then those studies and those research papers then get plugged in into policy and other issues. Doing so is a human right. Done right, it would ensure safe migration, prevent labor and human right fight. And in fact, migration is good both for the host country as well as home country. Host country gets talent, home country gets remittances. Populations are evenly placed. In fact, once these skill-based workers go outside, they can contribute to skill back in the home country. It's a win-win situation. In fact, migration is a win-win situation. If the identity politics or migration politics is kept aside, migration is actually a win-win situation. Restricted movement, it also made the situation more precarious for migrant workers. Proper information and financial condition forces many women to choose route of illegal, caught in the hands of fake recruiting agents. Agents send many people on visit visa illegally, and that is why state policies, changing of these policies becomes important. Otherwise, the state loses in terms of revenue, it loses in terms of skills, it loses in terms of people, and then it's a loss situation for everybody. Almost half of migration we have said, a lot of these typically are repetitive. Women do not stop getting pregnant when they are on the move. One example of how gender and sex is different in terms of both male and female. Suppose a female is pregnant and she has to deliver. If there is a proper transit facility, the women can deliver, are more likely to face health problem both in transit and in installation. So let's look at a couple of case studies. There are in fact 2 case studies in your unit, one of Chinese diaspora and one of Filipino diaspora. Indentured labor, when Portuguese imported Chinese labor from the settlement in Macau. Chinese had migrated to Southeast Asia as traders, exploited trade use, were temporary migrant to. So initially these were males, were traders. Some settled down, they were called sojourners. Temporary, it was only men who migrate. One distinctive feature of gender migration of old Chinese diaspora, it was typically male. In fact, world over, it was typically male. And these Chinese males were called sojourners, term coined by Chinese scholar Ching Shui Quick. Unlike old, the new diaspora have made host company a permanent home. Women either and many case studies you will see there are repetitions. You will see whatever happens with the Chinese diaspora, something similar happens with the British diaspora, with the Italian diaspora, with minor variations. new Chinese migrant, whether men or women, continue to retain social, cultural, and religious ties with mainland China. Chinatown, a cultural and commercial hub of the Chinese people, with their settled down, is another saving. Indians, when they migrate, tend to migrate in places where there are other Indians. It gives them a sense of security and also allows them to maintain their culture. So there is a history, King dynasty, 1720. Those who migrated were considered traitors. As with a lot of migrants from other countries, political change in earlier 20th century, Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, large number granted citizenship when Singapore and Malaysia became independent. So you'll have a lot of Chinese in Singapore, like you have a lot of Indians in Singapore, you have a lot of Indians in Malaysia, as you have Chinese. Became wealthy and prosperous, asymmetric distribution of economic resources, Malaysia, Cambodia, Indonesia. They were anti-Chinese agitation, as witnessed in Malaysia and Indonesia. So remember, there is a political engine running behind everything. Migration is not simple because when the migrants become powerful politically, or when they become wealthy, they look at power, political power, which leads to blowbacks by natives, also being classified based on skill, nature of work, Chinese merchant, Chinese coolies, Chinese sojourners, and there are these specific terms, particular form of gendered migration, which was predominantly male oriented. The new Chinese migration has a lot of women migrating. After 2010, Chinese women were seeing and become. Today, a lot of Chinese students are there in the Western countries, in a lot of places. You have Chinese stand-up comedians, which come on various shows. Unlike Filipino women diaspora who dominate the nursing sector, have joined multiple industries depending on their expertise and professions. In fact, a lot of cutting-edge research is being done by Chinese women. Global distribution of capital, international division of labor, creating different patterns of migration. To US, Canada, Australia has created family issues within home countries, challenge their role as passive members who were earlier dependent on their husband. Disturbing traditional power structures. Disturbing traditional power structure both at the family, at the home, as well as at the society level. Challenge their traditional role. Patriarchal society seems to be influenced by patriarchal practices. And this, then you will see society changes in, incremental steps, leading to more changes or leading to a blowback by traditional forces. France has one of the largest Chinese diaspora, estimated about 4 lakh. In independence of women and their migration thwarted their passive and and when these women become independent, then how the power structure plays out at home level, at the society level, and because of transnationalism, these changes then reflect back into the home societies. Because let's say when these migrants come back home into their, for a small visit, for a marriage, they have different cultural norms which influence back, home-based norms, etc. 1998 and 2005, from various provinces, China's economic stimuli, transnational mobility, independent choices on external forces. 2016 street protest, if you see the number of Chinese women, murder of Chinese worker in suburb of Paris. Migrate to Middle East, they are not allowed to marry the natives, subject to discriminatory laws, earn less. And remember, when you study regions, then you see, if you study India, there's a lot of Chinese who had there was a whole Chinatown in Kolkata. In fact, after the 62 war, a lot of Chinese left, went to the west. You will find Chinese at various places. In fact, Kolkata had a large population of Chinese. Chinese are employed in entertainment, domestic service industry, not covered under labor laws, recruited in lawful work, later forced into obviously, sexual exploitation becomes a factor in when we look at women migration. Not that sexual exploitation is not there in males. In fact, in males it is stigmatized, so it does not come out. When we study MDI 9 in terms of human trafficking, we realize that boys and men are equally, susceptible to sexual exploitation. The only factor is that society, it is stigmatized, does not come out. Take up lucrative employment, main earning members, leading to enhanced social and family status, become main driving force for transmission of Chinese culture. We will also see that women become the main driver of transmitting of culture. 80% of respondents who were married in China were divorced and with adolescent children of young adults. And then when you move into a new culture, the dynamic shift, and if both the spouses are not able to manage it, it will lead to a divorce. Quickly look at Filipino diaspora. The Filipino is of a recent origin. More than 10.2 million people of Filipino origin in more than 100 countries. 11% of Philippine population account for 10% of the GDP. In fact, it is more like a economic policy of Philippines to export people. Youngest diaspora enjoying gender parity, 52% females and 48% male. 52 to 48 male to female sex ratio. Migrated to developed economy, they are lauded as heroes in Philippines. Filipino out migratory flows to US. Remember, Western population being older, aged, individual family structures, you need caregiving. Filipinos provide that. Middle East, a large part of domestics are Filipinos. And also remember, US, Philippines was the US colony. They had a base when it was moved, so there was this natural affiliation also between Philippines and the US. US became second in size next only to Mexican migrants. Long distance Philippine identity, geographical dislocation. We will see that diasporas always maintain their identities. 25,000 Philippine nurses, US healthcare system after 75, form 73% of all foreign nurses graduate in the US. Domestics, 2/3 of over in stock of global servants, global capital spread as Hong Kong, Singapore. So caregiving is Filipino. Philippines has historically fostered out migration to run its economy. In fact, its economy is run majorly through remittances. Encourage and promote emigration, remove barriers, increase employment, could not absorb this highly educated, skilled, and aspiring professional and domestic workforce. So it became a government policy to get these people to go out, to emigrate out, because it helped them to get foreign exchange in remittances as well as employ these people productively. 70 in their economic policy, when an executive order made it mandatory for to send 50 to 70% of their earnings as remittances, money through official channels. So that's how the state, manipulates or influences or strategizes, migration. Conducted in Niger, that nice wives stay at home and that women do not travel. So these are the social and gendered conventions. And these are basically traditional power structures. Nicaragua, Dominic had greater female migration rate. Puerto Rico is the center of continuum with female migration and prohibitions coexisting. And it is based on cultures, it is based on, individual households, families, could acclimate to the host local standards, adapted to others, reinforce some of the traditional were more inclined to help with domestic responsibilities when wives joined later. When both migrated together, there was more likelihood preserving traditional family customs of women caring for the household. That also became an interesting issue. Say, for example, the story I was telling you about the Keralite nurses. Now, these girls were already in Germany for a long time before they got married and the males joined. Now, these males came from traditional Keralite society. They did not do housework. Now, in Germany, they were then it was necessitated. It was necessitated for them to do the housework. They could not adjust. Migration may result in even gendered role in order to maintain societal norms that seem to be under threat. So there is a reverse blowback which happens. You will see a lot of Bollywood movies which show that the famous Shah Rukh Khan Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, whereby this is a London-based family. The daughters are born and brought up in London. The father wants the daughter to marry a traditional Punjabi boy. So you see there is this conflict. Failure to adapt or adequately care in a new environment may exacerbate their decision to retain conventional patriarchal values, result in violence against their wives and children, which we saw in the case of this particular Keralite nurses case. In fact, this story is there on YouTube. If you go on YouTube, these nurses went to Germany in the 60s. So there's a whole documentary on it. Female headed household may have limited access to resources in home country despite women increasing home power. Women's social position, every you and women battled with separation. So migration also leads to other social costs. More family reasons have the lowest labor force participation. They may have difficulty finding employment. So inevitably, women who move as spouses to join their husband will have much more constraints after movement. Are often unemployed or working in jobs below their ability. 70% of Peruvian domestic workers in Chile have a high school or university degree. What I was talking about, Indian, cases where, for a peon or a clerk job, there are MAs and PhDs applying. Hence, migrants may have difficulty establishing respect for their professional qualification and competence. So, Bhumika, this could also be one of the reasons why a higher qualified person might go abroad and take a lower, status work, establishing respect for a qualification. Maybe I do not know, or it could be a way to a better, route, as well as experience linguistic, racial, and cultural hurdles and prejudices. You might not get a commensurate job, so you take whatever job is coming.
Understand,
Access
sir.
access to work and integration with destination community may be harmed by gender discrimination, xenophobia, double prejudice, and women and migrant, low wage occupation. There is this movie Namesake in terms of this is a Meera Nair movie. This Bengali couple move abroad, have children. The identity, the acculturalization, this spanning migration is not a simple thing. This spanning two different cultures, and it becomes all the more difficult for the offspring because today the NRI children, they do not know whether they are Indian or they are American, and the pressure from parents to try and retain their Indianness, the pressure from peers in America to become American, plays with their head. Employers' reliance on gender norms, preconception in destination country result in skill abuse, and on the basis of their gender, earn less than males, more likely to face wage delays, incomplete payment, inability to access their salaries. And also remember, when you're a migrant, you are scared. You are scared of the local laws. Say, for example, forget international, look at internal migration. We saw those videos and pictures coming out from Mumbai where, political workers are beating migrants and saying, why do a migrant is contributing to the economy, and then that migrant is worried for his life and limb, it does not help the whole situation. So let's sum up. Empowerment and vulnerability associated with professional women working areas, challenges that need to be tackled to protect women migrant workers from exploitation, unique features of Chinese and Filipino diaspora, 5 centuries, Filipinos new. On the other hand, is characterized by state-sponsored policy of human labor exploitation. There are reference and suggested reading at the end of the unit. And again, as I said, in case you want the unit, you can send me an email. Let me stop here and let me switch on the video in case there's a question. Hi, guys. If there is any question, Bhumika, Supriya, any question?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Supriya.
Good evening, sir. Sir, I enjoyed this session so much. Sir,
Okay.
one of the questions that came into my mind was the immense, migration from Punjab.
Hmm.
Because there are like two scenarios I have seen. So sir, in the earlier years, so women were trapped into marriage. Like the NRI marriage is very prevalent in Punjab.
True.
So because like you marry into NRI and the families hope that the women will go to the US, Canada, or in other countries and they will get a comfortable life.
True.
So this was the earliest scenario. And so in the recent
Correct.
days, so the women are themselves trapping men. So in the name of contract marriage. So like the family of the women they can or the boy of the family they go into the contract marriage with women. And so the boys who are like unable to like clear the IELTS test, so the girls or women like they are provided with hefty money in crores in lakh. Like they will go to the US, clear the exam, go to the US, settle, and then the boy can like easily they will get the card and get the as a, like a spouse they can easily venture
True.
into the into like another destination. So this is so like all these things are like especially Punjab, sir, especially Punjab. So
True.
like there is like ruckus for migration over there. Like sir, youth not even youth not even a designated skills. They want to go to US. They're
True.
blindly.
True.
So even if they are getting skills, they are getting educational facilities in India here, they're like eminent institution. But this is like a dream of getting landed to a foreign country. Even they are landing into a very low skill job, semi-skilled
True.
jobs. But sir, it's like a dream and they're like destinations to visit. Then what are the factors which are like influencing them?
So, Supriya, as we say, as I've been saying, it's a real and perceived betterment of life. Number one. Number two was Punjab has gone through a big tumultuous phase over the last couple of decades. There was, separatism, there was violence. Then it was, and also Punjab has had the consequences of the bad consequences of Green Revolution, which made India self-sufficient in food. The Green Revolution led to a lot of bad things happening like cancer, and then remember as populations grew and land holdings reduced, because remember the land holdings is normally parceled off between the boys, girls. Now some girls start getting shares of it, but as land holdings divide, and agriculture is not a very remunerative profession. So,
Yes, sir, definitely.
so agriculture not being a remunerative profession, political uncertainty and violence over a period of time, followed by bad governance and drugs as a problem.
Okay, sir.
So all people wanted their children to get out of Punjab.
Okay, sir.
So now, because Punjab, they felt was not able to give as good a life as that what they would get possibly, let's say Canada. Now, Canada, for example, has the largest Sikh population outside Punjab.
Yes, sir.
So what typically happened was chain migration was happened, and inevitably we need to understand institutions and processes in the West are better. There is a welfareism out there. You get welfare benefits. Out here, we have suddenly started this political narrative of welfareism means freebies. So,
Yes,
essentially, the governments, unless they do for citizens to help citizens tide over whatever things, the citizens will look at wherever they get a better deal. So, what you were talking about earlier of girls wanting to, or parents wanting their daughters to marry NRI so that the
yes,
girls
sir.
can have a better life.
Yes,
And now, this contract basis whereby the boys' family pay NRI girls a hefty sum so that the sons can go out and then they can divorce and do whatever they want. Remember, it's the need which is creating this particular. There is a demand which is creating a supply. The
yes.
demand is for a better life, and that better life is outside. So essentially, people do not feel that the country is able to give them a better life for whatever they may have. So then it becomes the states failing, the Indian states failing to hold on to its people.
Okay, sir.
And inevitably, as I said, migration has been part of the story of human being, and people will migrate internally or internationally wherever they find a better life, real or perceived, which they are doing. And in all these, you will have all kinds of horror stories where these guys would come and marry these girls and then leave them, and they had wives in Canada or US, and then they were
Yes,
called the NRI wives. Then they were going through litigation. See, remember, every activity in migration has costs, intended and unintended. And if policies are not, or the state does not intervene and let supply demand happen, then various things come into the picture, and inevitably it's the loss for, because it's the loss for society, the community, it's a loss for state.
okay, sir.
Okay, Supriya.
Yes, sir.
And Punjab became more prominent, but it would be happening from other states also.
Yes, sir. Sir, there is like, so there is like huge ruckus going on to like to go to abroad, study abroad, settle over there.
Which basically means that the Indian state is not able to provide those facilities,
Yes, sir.
or the people are not able to perceive that the state can provide those facilities. It can be both ways.
So maybe so the like the work life balance is much better in abroad as compared to India.
Again, it's a real or a perceived thing. See, at the end of the
Yes, sir.
day, the systems are much more in place outside.
Yes, sir.
So, and remember the fact, today a US dollar is 86 rupees. So if I'm earning $100,
Yes, sir.
look at the comparative money I'm earning back home.
So it will be so much less like what we get in.
So essentially, all these factors drive migration.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And
so
so, yes, sir. So one
bolo.
of the questions, so one more question. So about the genders of female migration. So we have seen, sir, so like if you have the money, you have the skills, so you get the right track, you get the right people to go through it, and you can settle over there. But so like women, say like we saw the example of Philippines nursing and Chinese diaspora women. But so in India, so we have seen like most of the women are like trapped into trafficking, like in promise of lucrative jobs, so, especially like the women who don't have that much skill, who go for domestic work in the Middle East or in the other nation. So like most of the time, so they are being tracked into like human trafficking and other smuggling and all. So like what are the steps like the Indian government should take like women are like, so some of the women are obviously, so they lured into like the lucrative jobs abroad. So like, what can a government do at the basic level? Because nowadays it's a digital age, social media. So you follow one or two pages, or you go to telegrams or any other. So you can find like so like if I scroll to through FB and or telegrams, like there are various pages uh, they like lucrative offers, like you can get this job, that job, even if you don't
Correct,
qualify.
correct.
So minimal qualification and for a good prospect. So like how can like our Indian government can amend these things, can stop all these things? Because in
Supriya, a couple of things. Uh, uh, no government can stop various illegal activities or criminal activities can happen.
yes,
What
sir.
typically, and with India, there is a specific problem. It is too big and too diverse.
Yes, sir.
And whenever you have a big and a diverse entity, the best way to manage is to decentralize.
Yes,
Now, what we in fact Indian, policymakers or think tanks are trying to do is centralize, thinking that centralization becomes easy. In fact, centralization becomes difficult because with diversity, it becomes difficult to manage. So
yes,
if the thing of let's say taking making a policy for recruiters, to oversee recruiters, to and to in and then again, remember, no government in the world can on its own do things. It has to involve community based organizations, NGOs,
yes,
social
sir.
organizations. Somehow, many a times it appears that Indian government or the various Indian state governments want to do things alone, which cannot happen.
Yes, sir.
So unless more and more stakeholders get involved, it's a very complicated. It's a and India is 1.4 billion people, man,
Yes, sir.
with so many states and so much diversity. So every time people give an example, look at that country, they are able to do this. Remember, for India, with such a diversity and numerical numbers, it is very difficult unless you decentralize, involve more stakeholders,
Yes,
and you have to continuously keep re-looking at policies because things are changing very fast. And that is why I think most of the times the traditional Indian media does a great disservice to the country because all these issues are not discussed, because there are
yes,
so
sir.
many issues which need to be discussed. People need to be made aware of, and unless you discuss and make aware of issues, uh, obviously, people will keep falling into trap and illegal activities will happen. Lose, it's detrimental to both families, society, and to the nation, because let's say, people get trapped into trafficking. For example, these women from Punjab who got trapped into trafficking, then they got stuck in the Gulf region. Then an
Yes,
MP
sir.
had to, get governments involved. Look at the amount of effort which does, and the time and money which goes, and the economic cost of it.
Yes, sir. So
Okay.
I feel, sir, there is like so there's lack of awareness, and like so various stakeholders should be involved, because
Correct. Correct.
so that's how like you can communicate. You can build a robust communication networking.
Correct.
So if you want to go and settle, sir, because there is lack of awareness, most of the most of the time I see, I read in the news that these youth were trapped, these youth were lured for jobs, and
Hmm.
they were
Hmm. Hmm.
sent to Middle East, and
Hmm.
then they were working continuously. So their visa were captured.
Correct.
So they were
Because
not given the basic
in the Middle East,
necessities.
there's something called a kafila system, whereby there
Yes,
is a
sir.
recruiter which recruits. Now that recruiter can do anything with this people he has recruited.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I feel, sir. So you rightly, sir. So there should be awareness and stakeholders from like top to bottom, and various other segments of the society should be encouraged and aware of.
Correct.
Yes, sir. So that's
Okay.
it, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bhumika, any question?
So, yes, sir, I have one question.
Please.
That the people why the people, especially from Nepal, can try to migrate. That's fine. There is some problem in their country, but they get early, like they get married in very early age, and then they try to move to Europe, most probably. So recently, I one case that there is a very young people, young couple. They are trying to move to Europe. So, sir, this is normal. There is any cultural to get early married and move to Europe.
So again, Bhumika, it has to do with specific culture. So look at the fact that in India today,
Yes, sir.
there are states like Rajasthan where marriages are solemnized at the age of 9 and 10, child weddings.
Mhm.
It's happening. You can see media reports, and if you go out there, you can find it. Now understand the fact that culturally this is there now. So now, and again, Nepal has all the characteristics of South Asia in terms of unemployment, in terms of underdeveloped economy, not enough jobs, aspirational youth. Remember, aspiration becomes a very important quality. So the parents or the society might have got you married, but you have an aspiration to do good. Now you cannot manage your aspiration in your home country. Then what do? You go out, or your family goads you to go out in terms of aspirations. A lot of middle class Indians want their children, for all their talk about nationalism and patriotism, they want their children to get a foreign degree because the foreign degree gives them a status.
Mhm.
It's a cultural thing. So all these political leaders who talk about the nation have their children studying abroad.
Mhm.
Don't we have enough quality, good infrastructure, education, etc., for their children to study out here? No. Why? There is a status factor. Then they feel, a lot of people feel, because we have the means, we should use those means. So there are, it's not a simple, straightforward thing about early marriage. It has to do with many other factors, which could be family based, which could be culture based, which could be a national economy based in terms of not jobs available, or the kinds of available. And then it has to do with aspirations. What are my aspirations?
Okay.
So, a movie like Swadesh, in case you have not seen, it's a Shah Rukh Khan movie. It's an old movie, Swadesh, whereby they very clearly said that this guy comes from the US, Shah Rukh Khan, so he's a big deal. Whereas there are other guys who are coming from other parts of the world to India, but nobody cares about them. And you can see it around. This you have a friend or relative or somebody coming from the US or Europe. There is a marked difference from somebody coming from Thailand or Nepal or Sri Lanka. There is a status element in the society. So people want to it's a supply and demand then. And there is a stereotyping. There are multiple factors. So unless you really know what are the factors, you do some research, or there is somebody who's done some research, you will not be able to there is never a deterministic factor.
Okay.
Bhumika?
Okay, sir. Understand, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Wonderful. Any other question?
Uh, as of now, no, sir.
Okay. So in case there are no questions, what we will do is then we'll meet at 12 o'clock tomorrow for MDIE 1, the next class, and then we'll meet at 5 to 7 for the third class, so that we will be able to complete most of the units in these three classes. So tomorrow 12 to 2 we'll meet again on Zoom for the next class. Okay?
Sure, sure. So
Okay.
thank you, sir. Sir,
Okay.
I would like to ask you one more thing that I
हाँ
miss
बोलो
all the
बोलो
classes. because that is not added in my number in the WhatsApp group. So I miss all the classes. This is my first class. So sir, there is any problem in
Sada sir, can you, Bhumika, can you share your number with Sada sir? Sada
so
sir.
I had already talked with the Sadan sir last week. Then he was just add me in a WhatsApp. That's why I received a link today
Okay,
only.
so now you are a part of the WhatsApp group, na?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So if you go in that WhatsApp group, Sada sir has also made YouTube videos of all the classes, which you can scroll up and check it out.
Yes, sir.
And with me, I have shared my email ID in case you want the PPTs. I will send you the PPTs.
Thank you so much, sir. So the previous PPT also can I
Previous also
for that?
MDI one. I have taken classes on MDI 1 and MDI 3. You
Okay.
just send me an email. I'll send you the PPTs for that also.
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. So have a nice evening, and I'll see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock.
Have a nice evening to you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Supriya. Bye, Sada sir.